I don't know how to start what happened to me with some kind of intro, like most greentext do. There's not really any extra info you have to know to understand why I did what I did. Be me, living in rural Pennsylvania, born and raised in a decently sized house surrounded by a massive forest. Find out when I'm around 14 that a drug plant, abandoned in the late 1950s, existed only about 20 miles out from my house. I had kind of glossed over the fact that this was a thing and did not think much of it until I turned 16. I developed a fascination with urban exploration and, thinking that the plant might still be standing, I obsessed over it. I found out that there were a series of tunnels underneath the plant used for waste disposal. Going on Google Earth showed me that the plant in 2013 was almost entirely gone. I finally decided to go about a month ago. I ended up going about a week ago. I pack a ventilator. Considering how deep the tunnels might go, I did not want to breathe whatever was in them, along with a bunch of water, rope, and a first aid kit I grabbed at Walmart. Decided to park my car about a half mile away from it, in case by some off chance there's cameras that can get you in trouble for trespassing. I get there, and it is almost difficult to find where the plant was. What little scraps of wood I can find that made up the frame appear to have chemical burning on the edges, fine plates of metal, and some miraculously unbroken glass panels half dug into the dirt, all with little pock marks of what also looks like chemical burning. Finally find a moss-covered hallway still standing, but it's clearly only a fragment of what it once was. Walk down it. Broken old linoleum, almost indistinguishable from the mud due to age, and staining still remains on the ground beneath me. The hallway structure tapers off a ways down. Finally find what looks like a circular metal hatch, about 20 feet wide and tall, is in the ground. It's almost completely buried by vines, weeds, mud, and old metal. See chemical burning on a lot of the vines, and the wood surrounding the hatch. Much more than what I found anywhere else. Did not bring a shovel, so I have to dig it out with my hands. Takes about 20 minutes, but still worth it. Fiddle around with it for a surprisingly long time before finding out that to open it, you have to push down 4 diagonal metal rods. Once the thing is unlocked, it seems to open by itself. I assume it was once opened with some kind of mechanism away from the hatch, and that it would automatically open once the mechanism was undone, and I only did it manually. Climb down a surprisingly well-conditioned red ladder. There is almost no light, so I shine my phone's flashlight down it after mounting the ladder. The bottom is not even visible. Climb down for another few minutes before I finally reach the bottom. I'm in a semi-large black room. Shine my flashlight around before walking away from the ladder into another hallway. I wander forward a bit until I turn a corner. See some kind of large circuit box. Flip a rubber red switch a few inches to the left of it and get the power back on. Looking behind me, I notice that the walls and ceiling are both very well maintained. Both are made of a blackish, plasticky material. The floor is some kind of black rubber linoleum, but appeared to have chemical damage, with pockmarking and puddle-shaped burns in them. Continue forward until I reach what looks like a much larger hallway. It reaches so far, I can see where the light fixture stopped working. The ceilings and walls are both at least 40 feet away from me. The place is absolutely cavernous. To the left, there is a hallway that leads to a door, with 2 doors flanking it. I walk down the hallway and open the front-facing door. The room has walls made out of plain metal, only about 15 by 15 feet large. Inside is a desk which looks like it had been damaged to the point around the middle to where it could no longer stand. It is in half and collapsed in on itself. What looks like it used to be a bed is to the left. The metal frame of the bed is completely melted apart. The mattress is covered in a massive, disgusting black stain. A large wardrobe faces it on the left, hanging open. Very old clothing. What looked like business casual is still hanging. One shirt was badly damaged, with the same black staining, and was hanging half off the hook of a white hanger beside the rest of the shirts. The floor is so badly damaged, it's almost difficult to walk through it. I leave, opening the door directly to my left. I'm almost immediately slammed in the face with a disgusting, acidic smell. I close the door, taking off my backpack and putting on my ventilator. I did not want to kneel on the floor, so I awkwardly fumbled with my backpack in one hand, the mask in the other, as I strapped it on my face. I opened the door again after fully situated, peering inside. There is some kind of massive, fleshy cocoon stuck to the wall, directly to the left of the door. It pulsates and wriggles as I look at it. Some kind of terrible noise comes from it, as the first layer of what looked like a blob of sick skin sloughed off the front. The dripping of the skin turning liquid as it hit the ground made the ground sizzle as it landed on it. A black puddle formed very quickly as the giant pod fell apart. Almost petrified and looking, I noticed what looked like a humanoid figure lift its leg from the cocoon. The horrible noise turned to a very wet and deep screaming. A human-looking figure, though much bigger, fat, and covered in that revolting yellowish flesh, was shakily standing there, only a few feet in front of me. It looked like an obese person had been doused in some kind of acid. It turned towards me. Its face did not appear to have eyes, but did have a loose configuration of teeth on the bottom of its swollen head. They, along with what looked like a nose, were almost submerged in the flesh. It waddled towards me, making the sound of a scream mixed with a sob through a water filter. My legs had become jelly from fear as I turned to run. I almost tripped over myself as I bolted from the free doors and ran back down the hallway I came in through. I hear a similar sound close to the ladder room. I enter it, only to see another cocoon only a foot behind the ladder, starting to burst open. I had not looked back inside after the power came on. My back was only a foot from it when I climbed down. I mounted and started climbing the ladder as quickly as I humanly could, listening to the screaming below me. I closed the hatch and ran back to my car. The screaming never got louder, so I don't think they were lucid enough to climb after me. I'm not sure what to do. I'm debating between marking the entrance down with something or calling the police. I want people to know where this place is, so no one else wanders into it, just like I did. I live in Germany, southern Bavaria, rather rural, but no bigger woods to be found around, nowhere to get lost or anything. After my A-levels, I had to work to get some money for university. I had some shitty jobs, but in the end, I got to work as a night porter in a little hotel, one of the 20 oldest breweries in Germany. By the way, a pretty nice place actually. It was nice. I got good money, and only had a few things to do. Open the doors for guests that arrived late, because it was a rule to completely shut the whole area after 10 p.m. Preparing the dining room, patrolling the area, which was a bit creepy, especially the brewery and the outer parts, but not too bad, etc, etc, etc. Worked there for 4 weeks at all, straightforward. 1.5 week in, Wednesday, 1:30 in the night. I had the dining room ready, had my first patrol through, so I was at the counter, chilling and reading when the door rang. I was a bit confused, because this was the first time that a guest had arrived that late. I had only to open the door, take his name, and show him to his room. The actual day porters would take his money and clarify everything. He was a pretty old guy, 65 to 70 at the very least, rugged up clothes, and he was pretty shook up, sweating and all. But I saw that he had a shit ton of money with him when he showed me his pass, so I figured it was okay. He only had a small suitcase and a Hessian bag with him. I figured that he was going to sleep right off the bat, tired and fucked up as he looked, but he took the key and sat down on a table, all his stuff with him, and ordered a beer. He paid bar and drank it, faster than I could have, even in my top times, and then ordered a second one. I was pretty weirded out now, and I was pissed too. With him being there, I had to stay in the same room, and I had to bring him his stuff, instead of reading some more. Well, so I had to stay there, make him food, which he also paid bar, nothing much, just some bread, cheese and sausage, the only thing we served during the night. He grew weirder and weirder. Even at 2:30, he still would not go to bed, staying at the table, always watching the windows, his food still on the table and the fourth beer down. I went as far as to ask him if he wanted me to show him to his room because he looked ill. Asked him if he wanted a tea or some medicine. At that point, he stared at me like if he just realized that I was here right now after I catered to him for more than an hour. While switching between looking at me and the window, he told me that he slept the whole day on the train, so he was not tired. A lie, obviously. He arrived by car. Yet again, a shitty, old and roughed up car, despite the amount of money he had with himself. At this point, I was seriously concerned. We are a rural area and don't have problems with the mafia or anything, but there have been occurrences. This guy, frightened, rugged up, but with all that money, always watching the windows, looked just like the prime example of someone who was being hunted, and if there was one thing that I did not want at that point, it would be problems with the mafia or anything similar. This was, I guess, when the shit really started. While he told me that, we suddenly heard a huge crash, like seriously huge, coming from the brewery building. Nothing should have been able to crush there. The machines were all out all night, and the building was half built in the woods, so no cars or anything other than the big trucks that brought the barrels away once a day. It sounded like one of the pyramids had been crushed. Solid 2 to 3 minutes of crazy loudness. Afterwards, silence. I was pissed. Obviously. A weird guy in the front, maybe hunted by the mafia, and a shit ton of problems in the future, if the sound was what I thought. Well, okay. The old guy had, at this point, a look onto himself that made me think he was just a pinch away from pissing himself. He was shaking and grabbing the bag he had with himself like his life depended on himself. Either way, I had to go back to the brewery and watch what was going on. I phoned the boss to tell him that we had a customer and something going on in the brewery because I did not know if I could leave the customer alone. While I tried to catch the chef, the guy asked me what was going on and told me that he would go with me to check it out. Very weird, considering how freaked out he already looked. This was the best possibility I had though, so I took him with me. He clasped rather closely to me and stank. Hell, it was a disgusting stench. I've never smelled a human smelling that much of sweat, and I figured that he eventually pissed himself. Either way, great. Evening was getting better and better. We arrived at the back door and I looked out, over the big yard, right over to the brewery with the pyramids in front. 5 intact, 1 actually broken down, the barrels lying everywhere. Luckily, the stench of sweat faded a bit right now, simply because everything smelled like beer. That was a good point. At the very least, I consider it good right now, no matter how bad it was. The bad thing though was the feeling. I know I'm way too easily spooked, but I never felt a thing like this before. I was close to pissing myself without having seen anything. It wasn't a really weird situation up to now, but I still felt like I was a second away from dying. No idea how to describe it. I was in cold sweat, and I think the old guy felt the same. He was whimpering behind me and clasped the door frame. Then I saw someone jumping away right over the wall. I'm a beekeeper. I spend a lot of times in fruit and nut tree orchards owned by very wealthy people. One orchard in specific, however, to this day, gives me the creeps big time. It's at the foot of a very small mountain range. Some argue that it is the smallest mountain range in the world, and it is sort of tucked away into a small ravine. The local area of these mountains, located in the Central Valley of Northern California, is well known to be home to very strange cultist activity, ranging from child sacrifices to just strange gatherings around a large cross used by local churches on Easter Sunday for the service. Anyways, to the point. One day, me and my business partner were out working our hives in this strange orchard. It was a scorching hot day, easily 100 plus degrees. We arrived and noticed that there was a burnt almond tree towards the back of the orchard. We moved closer to inspect and found that someone had stolen a sheep from one of the pastures nearby and lit it on fire. And the nails. Holy shit, the nails. There were thousands of nails everywhere, hundreds of which had been driven into the burnt corpse of the sheep or small dog or whatever it was. We wrapped up our job at that location pretty early because we just felt weird being there. My partner called the farmer to report what we had seen, only to pretty much never hear about it again. He never returned our calls about the subject, and only deals with us during pollination season. Still visit that place sometimes. The part of the tree that got slightly singed never recovered. There is still a tree that's half alive and half decrepit and dead. On top of that, both me and my partner have accidentally crashed our work trucks into trees in that exact orchard. Needless to say, I spend as little time there as I can, and to this day, wonder about what happened there. Feeling like I've seen beyond the veil is the most terrifying experience I could have. I had 2 incidents within 2 days that shattered my sense of reality lol. I was on a trip out of state, staying with a girl that I've known online for most of my life but never met. I was there all month, and these 2 incidents happened in the last couple of days before I left for home. We smoked and drank a little one night, which isn't anything I'm not used to. We are having a good night, just vibing to music and stuff, and we are starting to get a little sexual, like we've been a few times during the trip. Then this weird sense of conscious anxiety came over me, like there was something else inhabiting my mental headspace. Then slowly and steadily, it grew into this feeling like there was some kind of heavy presence in either the room that I just didn't have the sense to see, or right on the other side of the physical world, as lame as that sounds. The feeling felt like it was centered in the girl I was with, like there was some kind of sucking vacuum feeling coming from her that was tugging on my thoughts. Like this weird, very physical, but entirely mental feeling. What I refer to as a soul-sucking, if that didn't sound so stupid. Yeah, we know what you're talking about, pal. It got strong enough to the point where it felt like there was a mental black hole right in front of me coming from her, and I had to straight up get out of bed and get a few feet away as I felt like I was getting pulled into something. It terrified me in a way that I really had not felt since I was a real little kid, afraid of something that I could not comprehend. I nipped out and gave some anxiety attack excuse, then split out of the apartment to go for a walk, just to get away. I felt better the further away I got, even though I felt like the black hole was still following me. Walked like an hour or so before it eventually stopped. Definitely was not just some social anxiety kick. It wasn't the first time we were getting sexual on the trip. This was at the end of a month-long stay. The second big freakout, for lack of a better term, was the next day after the first one. I felt the same sort of soul-sucking void come over me, and it was just while I was playing a game while girl watched. I tried to just write it off as a bad feeling, but like the time before, it just started to grow. It felt almost like there was some kind of big heat source just a few feet away from me, even though it was all inside me. It felt like heat, but mentally, if that makes any sense. I had this gnawing feeling of helplessness and futility, like I was losing a fight or something, and it got to the point where things started to swirl. Not swirl like just got all dizzy, but legitimately swirl, like a clockwise spiral. My continual visual snow I have was slowly twisting and rotating in a clockwise spiral pattern, and my sense of balance was off, and I felt like I was rotating in the same direction. I got up, kind of made the same weak excuse about an anxiety attack, and basically just left for another multi-hour walk. As soon as I got a little distance away from the girl I was staying with, things started to clear up, but the majority of people I ran into on the walk felt the same way she did, like there was some kind of strong pull on my consciousness from them, and as if lingering too long, or letting them strike up too long of a conversation, was letting that black hole feeling grow again. I distinctly remember a conversation I had with some guy outside a church I was walking past. He was speaking absolute nonsense. He, out of nowhere, started giving me directions to some place that made no sense. Down a riverbank, walking under the highway till I reached the Colorado River, taking a right past a tool shed. I was in Oklahoma. This guy making this nonsense and legitimately mind-numbing conversation was not some drunkard or homeless guy either. He seemed to me like some kind of ex-cop or firefighter or something, and he claimed to be a preacher at the church. Why I remember this so vividly was that it wasn't until I'd been listening and just nodding along to these weird directions for a few minutes that I realized it was just utter and total nonsense, and that the whole time I'd been standing there, this feeling of some consuming black hole had just been silently growing close to me again. As soon as I realized, I left right away and just kept walking. Weird detail, I guess, but that whole run-in with the church guy has really stuck with me. It legitimately felt like he was just trying to lure me in with some distraction and slow me down from getting that black hole feeling out of me, if that makes any sense. After that, all of it kind of just calmed down and things went normal again. I made my way back to the apartment I was staying at and things were kinda usual again. I left the next morning. I've not really had any incidents of that intensity since, but I've definitely had a lot of constant small stuff going on and have continued to feel like whatever that was has just been kind of lurking and waiting till I'm vulnerable again. Sorry if this whole couple of posts don't make a lot of sense. There's just so much unexplainable feeling and thought that I experienced, and I'm also tired and trying to avoid sounding like some kind of crackpot. Be 9 years old. Own 2 Chihuahua dogs. Live in a 2-story tall house. House has a tall outer gate protecting the front door, covered with sharp crystal shards at the top for extra protection against burglars. Having breakfast in the kitchen because I was recovering from a cold and skipped school. Be home alone. Everyone was at work. I was newly recovered, so it was basically like a free weekend. Feels good, man. Suddenly hear loud, insistent scratching at the front door. Assume dogs did it because they want to go outside, so now I have to open the door up for them. Kitchen is less than 3 meters away from the front door, so I get there in a second. Dogs aren't at the front door. Assume they are outside and they want in. Open door. There is nothing outside. Groans, because I assume they might have changed their minds in less than 5 seconds and went to hide behind a bush or something. Yell their names. Both dogs come running down the stairs excitedly. They were at the top floor the entire time. Remember, I'm home alone and no one has rung any bell. Impossible to jump over. It did not take me 5 seconds to reach the door and open it, and no one was there. Realize I might have allowed something I can't see to enter my house. Shit my pants as I lock the door and hide with dogs in my room. I also asked my parents and my sister later that day when they got home if they ever went back home around lunch hour for reasons, but none of them did. I would have heard their keys at the gate door if that had been the case anyway, but I wanted to believe maybe I missed something. No look at that though. I told all of them what had happened, and my parents thought maybe it was a very big rat or something that might have managed to squeeze its way in and scratch the door that loudly. My sister on the other side told me she did experience a few strange things on her own involving the doors, so who knows. Go to McDonald's at night for a bite to eat. Pull into the parking lot. Stare into the window from a distance to make sure someone is inside. The cashier looks back at me and quickly looks away, which I think is weird. I get closer to the window for a better look. The cashier at this point hides under the table, which makes me suspicious. I give a loud courtesy knock on the door before opening it and heading in. I lean over the counter and look at the cashier and say hi in a very friendly manner. He jumps up and asks what I want. I say, you, because he was hiding under a table when I wanted to order. He should be doing his job. He literally, actually runs to the back. I'm upset, so I follow him. He picks up a broom and starts swinging it. I try to get it away from him, but he manages to hit me in the head, and I think I black out for a minute. When I come to a few seconds later, I'm pretty upset, as I think I should have been. I grab some patties and follow him. This is where it gets weird. He's the only car on the road since it's like 3 AM, so I find him easily. He turned off his headlights when he sees me getting near, which is super dangerous. This guy obviously does not care about the safety of others. We drive around the neighborhood for like an hour before he finally parks in front. It's super weird because we were driving for an hour, but his house is like 5 minutes from the McDonald's. Most of this time, he was driving without headlights, only turning them on occasionally. No police ever stopped him or anything. I didn't even see any. It was really weird, considering how many there usually are at night around here. So anyway, we are at his house now. He rushes in and locks the door, so I try to break it down, but I am too weak. I climb his wall and get into the second-story window. It's his kid's room. The kid is asleep. I fix his blankets and he wakes up and says, "Daddy?" I laugh and leave his room. I see the guy and ask him what's up because he seems out of it. He grabs a nearby knife. I freak out. This guy has become dangerous. The guy who was at McDonald's just a bit ago, working an innocent shift. You just can't tell anymore who is good and who isn't. I have to protect myself, so I take out my Swiss knife and stab him when he gets too close. He falls down pretty easily. I stuff the patties into his mouth and leave. I've never been more weirded out at someone's behavior. All I wanted was a McChicken. I posted this on X at some point last year as it's some thread and no one cared. This story is not particularly terrifying, but I've never really understood what was going on here, and I may as well retell it here and see what you guys think. To preface this, I have no mental conditions or illnesses that could cause hallucinations, and I have never been prone to sleepwalking. I was not being medicated at the time that this occurred either. Be me, maybe about 4 or 5 years old. I tend to wake up pretty early every morning, around or before 7 a.m. I've been living in this house for a few years and know my way around it very well. My room is on the second floor of the house. Often, when I wake up, I will head downstairs to talk to my parents or make breakfast. I wake up one morning. I recall thinking at the time that it was earlier than I usually woke up, but I don't remember an exact time. One of the first things that strikes me is that everything is in black and white. I'd woken up at the somewhat earlier hours of the morning before and knew what that looked like. This was completely different. There is literally no color anywhere. The world is visible only in blacks, whites, and grays. Some things are abnormally bright, and others are abnormally dark. In addition, it's very hard to see the details of anything. I wouldn't describe it as blurry. It looked more like when you fuck with the brightness and contrast of a black and white image really hard, and details start getting drowned out. I step out of my room, and it's the same deal. There was a big pattern tapestry made of some glossy, synthetic material hung on the big wall above the stairs at the time that had been there for a while. I knew the pattern of it relatively well, but I could not make it out. I don't remember there being any sound either. I'm pretty scared at this point, it's hard to say, and I'm having trouble navigating the area. I call out to my parents a few times, no answer. I'm iffy on this part, but I may have tried to find their room and not been able to. Their room was, and always had been, directly off to the right at the bottom of the stairs, and I knew exactly where it was by heart. I don't remember much else. I recall somehow ending up finding their room and getting their attention, and the world looking normal at that point. Nothing like this ever happened to me again. What might have been going on here? Be me, about 12 years old, checking out an abandoned burnt-out car in some waste ground with a friend. Suddenly, tramp from nowhere. Stinks, long dirty beard and hair, tattooed clothes. He says, "Don't burn out another car." We say, "We didn't burn out this one." He replies, "Open your jackets and put out your hands." Start backing away from him, thinking what the fuck. Mate says, "What are you gonna do?" Tramp replies, "Ooh, I might fuck your little asses." Shit 1,000,000 bricks and start sprinting. He chases us but falls over and makes a sound like, "Ahee!" Keep running, half laughing and shitting myself.